They called him Vinsanity. They called him half man, half amazing. And after one dunk in the 2000 Olympics, they called him a god in sneakers. Vince Carter wasn't just a high flyer, he was a revolution. A human highlight reel with a vertical leap that defied physics and a creativity that turned every dunk into art. But what if I told you that Vince Carter's career wasn't just about jaw-dropping posters? It was also about reinvention, about longevity, and a secret message from Kobe Bryant that changed the entire trajectory of his legacy. This is the story of a man who flew higher than anyone, and still found a way to stay grounded for 4 decades of greatness. Before he was the man who jumped over a 7-footer, before the dunk contest that rewrote the laws of physics, before the buzzer beaters, the all-star appearances, and the 4-decade NBA career, Vince Carter was just a kid from Daytona Beach, Florida, who wanted to fly. From a young age, Vince wasn't just athletic, he was electric. He played the drums, starred on the volleyball court, dominated in football, but once he picked up a basketball, everything changed. In high school, he was already making jaws drop, throwing down windmill dunks as a teenager. By the time he got to the University of North Carolina, under the watchful eye of Dean Smith, Carter had refined his raw athleticism into a complete basketball game. He could shoot, he could pass, he could guard multiple positions, and yes, he could jump out of the gym. Even on a loaded UNC roster, Vince stood out. His dunks in practice became legend. And when the lights came on, he owned the moment, leading the Tar Heels to back-to-back Final Fours. Scouts were drooling. Fans were buzzing. In the 1998 NBA draft, he was selected 5th overall by the Golden State Warriors. And within minutes, traded to the Toronto Raptors in exchange for his college teammate, Antawn Jamison. It turned out to be one of the most important trades in NBA history. Because what Vince Carter brought to Toronto wasn't just talent, he brought hope. At the time, the Raptors were still a struggling expansion franchise. They'd never made the playoffs. They barely filled half their arena. They weren't just forgotten, they were unknown. But Vince Carter? He was about to change that. Forever. From the moment he stepped on the floor in a Raptors jersey, Vince Carter wasn't just playing basketball, he was putting on a show. Every game was a highlight reel. Every fast break was an alley-oop waiting to happen. Every dunk was more vicious, more creative, more jaw-dropping than the last. He didn't just dunk on people, he embarrassed defenders. He levitated. Toronto had never seen anything like it. The NBA had never seen anything like it. And it didn't take long for the world to take notice. In his rookie year, Carter averaged 18.3 points, won Rookie of the Year, and put the Raptors on the map. By his second season, he was averaging 25.7 points per game, making the All-Star team and turning Raptors games into sold-out arenas across the league. They called him Air Canada. They called him Vinsanity. They called him half man, half amazing. And for the first time in NBA history, Canada had a superstar. Vince didn't just represent a team, he represented a movement. Kids started watching the Raptors because of him. Street courts across North America were full of teenagers trying to mimic that dunk. He brought style, swagger, fearlessness, and he made it all look easy. He wasn't just building a career, he was building a legacy. Every player has a signature moment. For Vince Carter, that moment came in Sydney, Australia, during the 2000 Summer Olympics. Team USA was stacked. Kevin Garnett, Gary Payton, Jason Kidd, Ray Allen, and Vince, who was now the NBA's most electrifying player. But nobody, not fans, not coaches, not the French national team, could have predicted what would happen next. September 25th, 2000. USA versus France. Midway through the game, the French miss a pass. Kevin Garnett pokes the ball loose. It bounces right to Vince at half court. He takes 1 dribble, 2. Then standing between him and the basket is Frederick Weiss, a 7 feet 2 inches French center, drafted by the Knicks in '99. Vince doesn't slow down. He doesn't Euro step. He doesn't pull up. He takes off, and then he jumps over him. Not around, not into, over. 1 leg, full extension. He clears Weiss, full body, and flushes it with fury. The arena went silent for a split second, as if everyone's brain had to process what they just saw. Then, explosion. The French bench was stunned. The American players lost their minds. Kevin Garnett put his hands on his head and screamed. Jason Kidd nearly ran into the stands. Gary Payton turned around like, no way that just happened. Commentators were calling it the greatest in-game dunk of all time. Years later, Weiss would call it the death of my basketball soul. It wasn't just a highlight, it was a cultural moment. That dunk wasn't captured by TikToks or Instagram lives. It was recorded on grainy Olympic TV, and still, it's etched into the minds of every basketball fan who saw it. Vince had already won the dunk contest that year. He had already become Air Canada. But that one play? That was something else. That was Vince Carter saying, "I'm not from here." No one had ever done it before. And no one has done it since. Because that dunk wasn't just physical, it was philosophical. It redefined what people thought the human body could do. And from that moment on, Vince wasn't just a player. He was a myth. People who hadn't watched basketball knew that dunk. International fans who didn't know English could say Vince Carter. It wasn't just one of the greatest in-game dunks ever. It was the dunk that made the world believe in magic. Vince Carter will always be remembered for his dunks. But if that's all you remember him for, you've missed the point. Because beneath the gravity-defying posters and jaw-dropping highlights, Vince was quietly becoming one of the most dangerous perimeter scorers of his era. He wasn't just flash, he had firepower. Let's rewind to the early 2000s. After the dunk contest, after the Olympics, Vince Carter had cemented himself as a superstar. But defenses started adjusting. They packed the paint, doubled on drives, forced him to shoot. And what did Vince do? He evolved. He developed a lethal mid-range game. He refined his three-point shot. He expanded his handle, mastered the step back, and became one of the most complete scorers in the league. In the 2000 to 2001 season, he averaged 27.6 points per game, led Toronto to 47 wins, and carried them to their first-ever playoff series victory. Then came the second round, and a showdown with Allen Iverson's Philadelphia 76ers. What followed was one of the most intense duels in modern playoff history. The 2001 playoffs, Vince versus Iverson. Game 1, Iverson drops 36. Vince responds with 35. Game 2, Iverson goes for 54. Vince counters in Game 3 with a 50-point masterpiece, 8 threes, surgical footwork, unstoppable. Game 4, 25. Game 5, 30. Game 6, 39. This wasn't just a dunker, this was a bucket getter, a shot maker, a certified killer. And in Game 7, with 2 seconds left, trailing by 1, Vince had a chance to send the Raptors to the Eastern Conference Finals. The shot? A fadeaway jumper from the corner. Clean release, perfect form. It hit the rim and bounced out. It was devastating, and it would become one of the most painful what-ifs in Raptors history. But let's be clear, that miss doesn't erase what Vince did that series. He went toe-to-toe with the MVP of the league. He elevated his game when it mattered most. And he showed the world that he wasn't just a dunker, he was a legit superstar. By the time he finished his career, Vince Carter had scored over 25,000 career points, more than 2,200 made three-pointers, top 10 all-time at the time of his retirement, and shot over 37% from deep in multiple seasons. He wasn't just a guy who could shoot. He was a guy who did it consistently for 2 decades across 8 different teams: Raptors, Nets, Magic, Suns, Mavs, Grizzlies, Kings, Hawks. No matter where he went, he found ways to score. So why does this part of Vince's game get overlooked? Simple. Because his dunks were too good. They were too loud, too unforgettable. They overshadowed the rest of his game. But the real ones, the players, the coaches, the teammates, they knew. They knew that Vince Carter could dunk on you and shoot over you, that he could blow by defenders or ice the game with a step-back 3, that he was more than a highlight. He was a problem for 22 years straight. By the late 2000s, the hang time had faded. The posters were rarer. The high-flying highlight machine was slowing down. Vince Carter wasn't the face of the league anymore. He wasn't headlining All-Star Saturday or dominating the SportsCenter Top 10. For many stars, this is the part where the curtain closes. The ego can't handle the reduced role. The game evolves and leaves them behind. But Vince, he chose a different path. He looked in the mirror and decided to evolve. It was around this time that Kobe Bryant, another icon, another competitor who understood the grind, pulled Vince aside. Kobe told him something simple, but profound. If you want to play 20 years, you have to let go of being the man. But you can still be the reason. That moment hit different. because Kobe wasn't telling him to fade out quietly. He was telling him, "You still have value. You just have to redefine what that value looks like." And Vince listened. Over the next decade, Vince Carter became something NBA fans rarely get to see. A star who embraced the role-player arc and thrived in it. He went from a 25-plus PPG scorer to a veteran 3-and-D wing in Dallas, a locker room leader in Memphis, a mentor in Sacramento, a culture setter in Atlanta. He wasn't playing 35 minutes anymore, but in his minutes, he was still making an impact. Need a big three? Vince could still drill it. Need someone to talk to the rookies? Vince was already in their ears. Need someone to take the final shot in a close game? Yep, he still had ice in his veins. And the crazy part? He kept adding to his legacy. By the time Vince retired in 2020 with the Atlanta Hawks, he had played in the 1990s, the 2000s, the 2010, and yes, the 2020. That's 4 decades. No player in NBA history had ever done that. He played against Michael Jordan and against Zion Williamson. He faced off with Kobe Bryant and mentored Trae Young. He wasn't just a bridge between generations. He was the bridge. And what made it more meaningful? He stayed relevant, respected, and loved the entire time. Not because he chased rings, not because he forced his way into super teams, but because he showed up, embraced who he was, and never stopped loving the game. Vince Carter never won a championship. He never won MVP. He wasn't always in the spotlight. But what he gave the game? Joy. He gave us a reason to look up, literally. He gave an entire country its first NBA icon. He gave fans across 4 decades a highlight every single night. And he showed young stars that you don't have to fade. You can evolve. He was the first. He was the flashiest. And he might be the most important dunker the game has ever seen. By the hoop. What's your favorite Vinsanity moment? That Olympic dunk? The 2000 contest? His clutch playoff run? Drop your take in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into NBA greatness.